We're diving deep into the world of AI today, specifically those large language models everyone's buzzing about.
Right, right.
You know, the ones writing poems, maybe even screenplays down the line. But here's the thing. Underpinning all that artificial intelligence, there's this fundamental concept most people haven't even heard of. Tokens.
And it's more than just a tech buzzword, that's for sure. If you actually want to go beyond just like basic AI interactions and really truly unlock their potential, understanding these tokens, it's really key.
Okay, so you've piqued my interest. But OpenAI, the folks behind some of these models, they describe these tokens as, and I quote, pieces of words. Which, I gotta say, on the surface sounds deceptively simple.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of like saying the Grand Canyon is just, a hole in the ground. Technically true, but it misses the incredible, mind-blowing complexity.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
See, if AI only operated on individual letters, or even whole words for that matter, it would completely miss the nuances, the subtleties of language, the way meaning shifts depending on the context. And tokens, my friend, tokens are how these models grasp that context.
So are you saying tokens are like the atoms of AI thought? Those fundamental building blocks?
Exactly. You got it. And just like atoms combine in countless ways to create everything around us, tokens form the basis of AI's understanding and everything it outputs.
Okay, you've got my attention, I'm not gonna lie, but I gotta be honest, it still sounds a bit abstract. Got any real-world examples that'll make this click for our listeners? Something relatable?
Absolutely. All right, remember that famous Wayne Gretzky quote? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. 11 words, and guess how many tokens?
I don't know, shoot.
11. A perfect one-to-one in this case. But, and here's where things get really interesting.
This is where it gets interesting. Don't leave me hanging.
This process, it's called tokenization, and it's not as straightforward as you might think. You see, the same word, and this is wild, can actually be split into different tokens depending on, you guessed it, the context.
Hold on, are you saying the same word can be multiple tokens depending on where it appears? That's kind of blowing my mind right now.
It's true. It's all about the meaning, not just the individual words themselves. Imagine the word tomatoes.
Okay, tomatoes, got it.
At the beginning of a sentence, capitalized like, tomatoes are my favorite, the AI might actually break it into two tokens, recognizing the capital T implies a possible name or, the start of a new thought.
So wait, you're telling me the AI is smart enough to understand that tomatoes at the start of a sentence might mean something different than, let's say, tomatoes later on? That's pretty amazing.
Exactly, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Later in that same text, if tomatoes pops up again, but in a totally different context, like I love to eat tomatoes, it might be treated as just a single token.
Okay, now this is getting really interesting. So what I'm hearing is it's not as simple as just like counting words anymore.
You got it.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really, really important for anyone using AI, especially with those token limits we hear about. Because those limits, they directly impact how much your AI can, think about at once, which changes how you have to approach your prompts, how you structure your requests, everything.
Okay, so token limits. Those sound like a bit of a buzzkill after all this mind-blowing talk about AI understanding context. How do these limits actually work in practice? Like, what are we talking about here?
Well, OpenAI, they give us a good place to start. They say, roughly speaking, one token is about 4 characters in English, or, about 3/4 of a word.
So if I'm, let's say, writing a prompt for an AI, I can kind of, guesstimate how many tokens I'm using based on that.
Exactly. You got it. But here's the thing. They also have this limit, right? A limit of 128,000 tokens, which sounds like a ton, right?
It does. I mean, I can't imagine hitting that writing like a quick email or something.
Right. For your everyday stuff, it's probably not a big deal. But let's say you're doing something a bit more heavy duty. Think about, for example, something like the U.S. Declaration of Independence. OpenAI uses that as an example, and get this, it comes in at 1,695 tokens.
Wow. Okay. So those limits suddenly feel a lot more real.
Yeah.
And especially if you're trying to do something complicated, really leverage the AI.
Exactly. It changes how you have to approach things. Let's say you're, I don't know, a writer using AI to help draft a long article. Hitting those token limits means you need to rethink your whole strategy. It's not just about writing more words, it's about writing smarter, working within the constraints of those tokens.
It's like having this incredibly powerful tool, but you need to understand its limitations to really, truly use it effectively.
Precisely. And it gets even more well, nuanced, I guess, when you start thinking about different languages. Remember how we were talking about tokenization being all about meaning, not just the words
All
themselves?
right. Right.
Well, that gets amplified when you consider how different languages are structured.
Right. And I was, reading a bit about how this whole tokenization process, it actually differs across languages, which makes sense if you think about it, right? Some languages are incredibly concise, like they can pack tons of meaning into a single word, while others are more, well, shall we say, expressive and take a bit more space to convey the same thing.
Think of it like packing suitcases.
Yeah.
Some languages, like English, they're like those, what are they called, packing cubes?
Hmm.
They manage to fit so much meaning into a single word. Other languages are more like packing individual socks. They need more words, or in this case, more tokens, to express the same amount of information.
That's a great analogy. So what you're saying is using AI for certain languages might actually be more costly than others because of this whole difference in, what did you call it, token density.
That's a really important point. Languages that have more characters per word, naturally they're going to have a higher, token to character ratio,
Yeah.
meaning they just use up more tokens. And since a lot of these AI providers, they price their services based on token usage, that can add up fast, especially for tasks like translation, for example.
So if you're, let's say, a developer working on a big global project, you actually need to factor in those potential cost differences just based on the languages involved. And that's not something you'd necessarily think about from the get-go.
Exactly. And it really underscores something crucial about AI development itself, the training data.
Ah, yes. Training data, the massive amounts of text that these AI models are trained on.
You got it. The more diverse and extensive that training data is for a specific language, the better that AI model will be at understanding and processing it. And that impacts everything from, like we've been talking about, tokenization to its overall performance.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from those pieces of words to like packing suitcases in different languages.
It's a wild ride, this token stuff.
It is, who knew? But for our listeners, who I hope are just as fascinated by all this as I am, what's the big takeaway? What's the so what of these tokens?
The so what is that tokens, they're like the secret handshake to getting the absolute most out of these AI tools.
Okay, I'm all for secret handshakes, but can you break that down? How does understanding tokens actually change how we use AI in our daily lives?
Well, for starters, you can write way, way more effective prompts.
Oh, okay.
Because instead of just like throwing a bunch of words at the AI and hoping for the best, you're thinking about how those words are actually being interpreted, how those token limits might be affecting what you get back. You're basically speaking its language.
So it's like going from fumbling with a foreign phrase book to actually having like a real conversation with a local. You
Yeah.
can express yourself more clearly. You understand all the nuances.
Exactly, 100%. And it's not even just about being more creative with your prompts, it's about being more efficient too,
Right.
right? When you really get these token limits, you avoid those frustrating moments where you hit a wall, because your request was too long or too complicated for the AI to handle.
Right. And that goes back to what we were saying about costs, right? If you're
Mm.
working with a language that has one of those uh, high token densities, knowing how to optimize your prompts and work within those limits, it could save you a lot of money.
Absolutely. And this is where a tool like, OpenAI's Tokenizer, it's super helpful. It basically lets you visually see how your text is being broken down into those individual tokens.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to play around with that at all?
Yeah. The tokenizer, I was actually messing around with it earlier, and I gotta say, it's surprisingly addictive. Like, you start to see the patterns, you start to understand why certain phrases are more expensive in terms of tokens than others.
Right. It's a real eye-opener. And it just drives home how even these tiny, seemingly insignificant changes to your wording can make a huge difference in terms of that token usage, and ultimately how the AI processes what you're asking it to do.
I have to agree, seeing it visually, it just brings this whole concept to life. It's like you suddenly have X-ray vision into the inner workings of this AI.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, if you really want to go beyond just casual AI use and truly unlock the power of this stuff, go play with the tokenizer experiment. See these concepts in action for yourselves. Trust me, you won't look at AI the same way again.
And on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive into the surprisingly fascinating world of AI tokens. Remember, they're more than just, pieces of words. They're the key to understanding how these AIs think and a much more powerful way to use these incredible tools. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and as always, keep diving deep.